Thank you so much for coming. You guys all excited to be here on the Thursday of Comic-Con? Good. My name is Sam Meggs. I'm an associate writer at BioWare, writer for IDW's Star Trek WAYPOINT, and the author of The Fangirl's Guide to the Galaxy and Wonder Women. And I am so excited to welcome you today to this incredible panel filled with people that are way awesomer than I am. And I am going to let them introduce themselves. This panel is Intersectional Feminism in Comics, Be Your Own Superhero. And I think we're going to have a great conversation today. So why don't we get started with Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Kuhn. I'm the author of the HEROINE COMPLEX series, which is not comics, but it has a cool comics-like cover. It's a series of novels starring Asian American superheroines. And comics-wise, I wrote for Fresh Romance. I'm writing a series of Barbie comics, and I just finished co-writing a comic book continuation of the movie Clueless. What? That's happening.
My mind is blown. Hi, my name is Robbie Thompson. I write comic books for Marvel and TV, such shows as Supernatural. That's me. Hello.
Hi, I'm Susana Polo. I write for Polygon.com. I do a lot of our comics coverage and our entertainment coverage. I started a website called themarysue.com way back in the day. And I also do a little web series called Issue at Hand about explaining comic books to people because I love comic books. And yeah.
Hello, I'm Steenz. I work at Lion Forge as a community manager. I'm also an illustrator. I have a book coming out from Oni, March of 2018, called Archival Quality. I was a retail manager for comics. I was a librarian for comics, and now I am a publisher for comics. So I know a little bit of everything about the industry.
Hi there, my name is Cait Brennan, and I do a lot of things. I'm a rock singer and songwriter. My new album is out, it's called Third, and it's out on Omnivore, Warner Brothers. I'm a screenwriter. I've written movies, Love or Whatever. Gosh, what was that other one? And I also write pop culture comic stuff for Pop Shifter and other websites.
Hey, I'm Rosie Knight. I write comics, and I write about comics at Women Write About Comics and Nerdist. I used to be a retailer at Orbital Comics in London, and I used to be a youth worker teaching marginalized kids with poetry and comics. So yeah.
We have been asked to take water bottles with labels off the table and also the green cooler, even though it is adorable. Sorry for this brief interlude.
Can I take off the label? Yo.
That was creative thinking right there, and I liked it. Thank you, guys. This is an incredible panel of folks, and I am honored to have you all here today. I'm curious. I think let's start down at the other end this time with Rosie, but I would love it if you guys could share with us one character that had a really big impact on your life growing up, somebody who you felt represented you when maybe there wasn't a lot of representation of that type elsewhere in comics or mainstream media.
For me, that was definitely like, in general, the comic Love and Rockets, but mostly like the character Maggie, because it was like the first time I'd seen a queer woman who was like big and often represented as like fat, and they were punks, and they were cool, and it was like the first slice of life book I think I really read. Now I look back on it, and it just seemed to be something I could relate to, and just really treated in this kind of respectful, cool manner. And the book also had a bunch of like disabled characters and all kinds of stuff that I didn't necessarily see growing up. So that for me was a big one.
I grew up in the 70s, I hate to say. And so, you know, as a trans girl, because I knew at an early age, and there wasn't much representation from that point of view that one would look on in a positive light. So, you know, it's one of those things where the, you know, sort of traditional stuff, Wonder Woman and that kind of thing were sort of the hooks. Love and Rockets was big for me sort of in the 80s when I started getting into like alternative comics and that kind of thing. That was a big moment where I started to feel like, hey, maybe there is a place for a different kind of character and a different kind of story, because up to that point I hadn't really seen it. So that was really nice.
For me, I watched a lot of cartoons growing up and over the past few years and yesterday, and I will continue to watch a lot of cartoons. And you usually like gravitate towards the people that like look like you. So pretty much anyone voiced by Cree Summer is who I was into. Susie Carmichael and the like from Rugrats. But also, I feel like my interests are constantly changing, and I think one character that I really kind of feel super close to is Kamala Khan, just because, yeah, I know, she's great. No, I love her so much because she's like the most atypical Marvel hero, but she's relatable to everyone. Like a Pakistani teenage girl, and everyone's like, I have had that happen in my life. I also like the smell of bacon. I also like writing myself into fan fiction, So it's like, that's what I like to see. I like to see real characters. So as I am growing up, not just, when I did grow up, I think Kamala Khan made a huge impact on me.
So the little window through which I branched to all of my other nerd interests. Everything basically began with Batman the Animated Series for me, and Batman is really the core of like how I got into being a nerd, and it's still very like that window of the DC universe is still very big for me, and there's not a lot, well, no, there is a lot there for when you're looking at like female character representation and to a certain extent people of color. They're kind of few and far between, and certainly when I was a kid and first getting into Batman, I was very much in this like little girl nerd place where I was like, all the stuff that is supposed to be for girls is stuff I don't care about. So like Batgirl's supposed to be for me, I don't care about her. Wonder Woman's supposed to be for me, like I don't care about her. Like they're just girl versions of like male superheroes, and I don't get it. And I definitely, I sort of like, I warmed to Cassandra Cain because she's an archetype that I really enjoy. But I think it wasn't until Renee Montoya, who was created for the animated series, and then when I was in college and was first sort of like getting a group of friends who were like, tell me about Batman. I want to read Batman books. You know so much about Batman, that I was giving them comics like 52, like the year-long weekly series 52, where Renee sort of goes from being like this washed-up cop private detective to being a superhero, and does it through an arc of, and for me it was also like, it was relating to a Latina character, was a big fun part of it for me. And as a kid, like watching the animated series, like hearing her say, it's like the tiniest things, but just having a brown character who is saying the occasional Spanish swear word, like those are the things you latch onto. And for her in 52 to have this arc where that's sort of, I look at it as the reverse of Batman, where she had to deal with her anger issues and her trauma on the path before she could become the Question. And that was what she had to leap over in her origin story to become a superhero, instead of putting her superhero motivation in this place of trauma. It was in this place of healing that I found really interesting and cool and liked.
I think there's a lot of me probably represented already, but I think probably R2-D2. First movie I ever saw was in the theater was Star Wars, and my brother and I got action figures before the movie came out, and my brother, because I hadn't seen the movie yet, my brother got like a golden god, and I got like a trash can. And I was like, this movie sucks, and I hate this trash can. But then I saw the movie and I was like, well, he's kind of sarcastic and gets shit done, so I like that dude. So yeah, R2-D2.
When I was growing up, I felt like there wasn't a lot as far as Asian girl faces in media, and especially Hapa mixed race Asian girl faces. So I always had to squint a little bit. Like, I loved Lois Lane, and she's brunette, so I'd be like, oh, maybe she could be Hapa if I squint hard enough. But I do remember that as a child, I was deeply obsessed with strawberry shortcake to an alarming degree. And there was an episode of the cartoon that did not really make sense, where she goes around the world and she makes all these new friends, and then for some reason that's not explained, they come back to Strawberry Land with her, I guess, just to help her out with stuff. And one of the friends was an Asian character named Almond Tea. And you know how all the Strawberry Shortcake characters have their little animal familiars? So her familiar was, of course, Marzipanda. And she had like kind of the classic like Asian girl bowl cut, like this and like with the bangs. And so like I immediately had to have her and everything related to her. And I wished that the Strawberry Shortcake cartoon was all about Almond Tea and Marzipanda.
Do you not just like collect friends from all over the world and then come and live with you?
I can convince them to come back with me and just hang out for an extended period of time.
I wish. This question is for anybody who wants to jump on it first, but I'm curious about when you first started identifying as an intersectional feminist, and what do you think some of the more harmful misinformation about feminism is, and how we can overcome it? It's kind of a two-part question, but I think they kind of go hand in hand.
I think I realized I was an intersectional feminist when I read the definition of feminist. That's, I mean, it is what it is, and being Black, it kind of just comes with it, I don't have to force it. And I think some of the harmful stereotypes of, feminists that can and should be overcome is that, it's that feminism is like a white people thing. Because white people tend to be very aggressive about stuff to the point where it's no longer cool. And I think in order to overcome that, you need to normalize being a feminist as being an intersectional feminist. If someone says, oh, you're a feminist, so, you're excited about being able to vote, I'm like, sure, but what I'm really excited about is making sure the women that marched in the back when we were trying to learn to get to vote is in the front with us, Right. So I think you have to be cognizant and deliberate with your feminism to make sure that you're including everyone, especially if you aren't a person of color, or you're not, neurotypical or something like that. Just making sure to look outside of yourself and be like, okay, let me calm down for a second. Like, pussy has her tight, but also, what about my Black friend over here? Is she getting any kind of attention as well, So that's what I think.
I think, I was lucky to grow up around, a lot of really incredible Black women who were having that kind of discourse. But when I was, became thoughtful and, Twitter was, a really huge part of that for me when I was, a late teen, was, following people on Black Twitter and then reading books that they told me to read. And I grew up in an area where it was, a predominantly, people of color. So I already was, well-versed in the idea of privilege and stuff, but putting it into these things where even your marginalization, and I'm, queer, and I'm disabled, and I'm a woman, but I'm still white. And it's always knowing and thinking about that stuff, and especially coming from England, where literally everyone is oh, suffragettes, those are the best people ever, we're so lucky to vote, but they were horrible racists. And it's and they literally had the most horrifically racist signs and stuff. And I think as a white person, it's basically about constantly unlearning privilege and calling stuff out with your privilege about that, and educating people and being yeah, this was good, but Steenz was saying, what about these people who did the work? And for suffragettes, for example, there was a lot of women who'd been brought over during colonialism, from India and stuff, who were a huge part of the suffragette movement, but never get any of the credit. And it's, just unlearning and listening to like women of color and specifically black women who a lot of times are leading the discussion and coin the term.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I kind of grew up, I was a very naive kid, and I probably haven't changed that much, to be honest with you, but I came out, as trans when I was it was a long time, it was the 80s, and I was a teenager, and I was kind of in a redneck area. And to me, like, feminism was just a natural thing. I mean, it wasn't like a thing that had to be thought about. The idea that women should be equal was just very basic to me, and just like, how can you not think that? When I moved out to California, and I ran into, I moved to San Francisco, and I ran into a lot of feminists at that time. I didn't know about the trans exclusionary type of feminist. And so, like, I ran into that very quickly, you're a dude, you're not welcome here, kind of thing. And to me, that was just like, it kind of put me off a little bit at first. It put me off, made me feel like, okay, is feminism a thing that does not include me? You know what I mean? Am I not welcome in a feminist space? And obviously, it turned out that that was not a majority view. And to me, it became very clear from the people that I met, my friends, it has to include everybody. And that was the beginning of that sort of intersectional thought with me. And I also am disabled and have other stuff going on. I come from a very diverse family background, although it doesn't show very well. But it's all, we're all in it together, and that's the thing about intersectional feminism that is important, and why I think that we're talking about it today. So.
I think I first started identifying as a feminist back when I started getting Sassy magazine, which was like a big magazine in the 90s that kind of tried to push Left for Sassy magazine, that kind of, I think, tried to push the envelope a little bit as far as what magazines for teen girls were doing at the time. And I felt like even though I think their staff was still pretty predominantly white, but they always made an effort to include models of all different races, models of all different sizes. So just seeing that visual, I think, was sort of powerful me in starting off from that place of, I'm a feminist, and obviously feminism includes all people. Obviously, it's intersectional. And so I get super bummed out when that is not the case. I think that to go with what Steenz was saying earlier, we have to be really aware of not leaving people behind. I mean, I'm super excited about the new Doctor Who and Rey and Wonder Woman, but I get really bummed out when I see kind of an attitude from white geek girls where they're like, oh, we're done, like, mission accomplished. We don't need to do anything else anymore. Like, it's so exciting. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but in order to really see myself on screen, I still need to squint. And I would like to get to a place where none of us have to do that.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this a lot, but like when I started the Mary Sue, it was all those years ago. It was very much from a position of like, well, I went to Oberlin College. I didn't take any gender and women's studies courses there. I gotta start listening and like reading, and I can't just go on what my own assumptions about this are going to be, because I want this to be a site and a project that speaks to and embraces all of the people that I know, all of the women that I know, and all of the people that I know who are somewhere around that general identification arena. And I want this to be something that doesn't exclude them, and I want this to be something that thinks about them. And the way I need to do that is by listening, and for me it was a lot of looking at Tumblr back in the early 2000s, and paying attention on Twitter, and trying to be open and receptive to that stuff so that when I talked about it, I was doing it from a place that made people feel included and recognized, rather than the alternative.
I guess for me, I don't know if I always had the right words for it, but I think it was really, I was heavily influenced by my mom, who's just a total badass, and she's a biracial woman who has spent 50 years in a sexist industry, which was great for me when I entered the entertainment industry. It was like I had a good role model. But she always, she never really shied away from anything from when we were a young age. And at a young age, seeing my mom make less money, and then as a Latin woman make even less money, that tends to leave a mark, and I think a good one. And then I think exactly what you just said is, from that point on, just listening and learning.
To that point, I'm curious about how this has influenced your own work, and I really want you guys to sort of, from a more personal place, talk about what you're working on right now and what the diversity of characters is in your current work or in something you've done in the past that you're particularly proud of.
My novels, the Heroine Complex novels, star two Asian American superheroines, and they're sort of lifelong best friends. They have a complicated relationship, and my sort of, I guess, directive with the series was I wanted it to be about women of color having fun, because I feel like a lot of times when we're in narratives at all, we aren't having a lot of fun. And I wanted to have something where we could be centered in that way. So it's like, we also like to eat bad junk food and sing worse karaoke, and have like hot love interests and all that, just like the sort of big blockbuster superhero narratives I grew up on. And then as far as, especially with licensed work, sometimes there's maybe not as much room to play, especially with your protagonist, because it's kind of set. But certainly with things like Barbie, when we were coming up with what would sort of be the concept for that series, we wanted her sort of two main friends to be BOC, Barbies of Color, and to have them, be very central in the narrative and have a lot of agency, so that even though, as dictated by the license, it still has to be about Barbie, there's at least a range of people and experiences hopefully represented.
In my book, Archival Quality, I created it with my writing partner, Ivy Noel Ware, and when we were putting the story together, she had the idea for the story from when she was working at a medical oddities museum, and that's where the story takes place. And when I got the script, I was like, this is dope. I would love to be a part of it. Do you have any ideas as to, what your characters are going to look like? And she was like, no, none at all. And I was like, great, because I do. And so our three main characters, we have Sel, who is Samoan, and then we have Abba, who is African of the Yoruba culture, and then we have Holly, who is mixed race, Korean and Black American. And I did this because why not? I didn't feel like I needed to include any white people as main characters, because why? When I think about what you create, you have to think about what are the reasons that you're doing this. I made Sel a Samoan character because I know someone who is. Abba is so timid and weird and strange because I know people like that. And I want to make sure that the people that read the book see themselves not just in race but in small things as well. With Abba, a lot of times when you read about Black people in comics, they're having a rough time. And he's not. He's very organized. He's he kind of has a stick up his butt. I mean, it is what it is. And even smaller things so I recently have been treated for hyperthyroidism, and because I was treated so quickly, I started gaining weight super fast. And for someone who did not grow up gaining weight slowly, it was kind of like a shock to be like, oh, I can't fit in anything anymore. And I started getting stretch marks everywhere. And I was like, this is not something I'm used to. I wish I could have dealt with this during puberty, because then I'll have 3 years to deal with it, but now I have 2 weeks. So Sel, my main character, she has stretch marks. And it's a very small thing. You don't often see her without clothes, but she sleeps in pajamas. And sometimes you see those, and I want to make sure that people can see those little things and see themselves in it, not just with race?
Well, the stuff that I do tends to be fairly autobiographical, and usually, even if I think I'm writing a character, and I try to, create a character, later on I find out that that character was just me, and so what I try my best to do is to just represent the experiences that I've had, in a personal way, and not flinch away from that, and just be honest about stuff. The work that I've been hired to do in terms of screenplays and that kind of thing, one particular one that I worked on, the character, the main sort of like antagonist villain of the piece was bisexual, and that was their villainy, that was their terrible crime, was that they were bisexual, basically. And, writing this, I was delivered a script where that was the case, and I was like, we can't, that's not, you don't want to do that. and so it was one of those things where I brought my own experience in that department and sort of humanized that character and made an understandable journey, and sort of put the bad guy onus on the people who had a problem with it. And that's, kind of what I try to do in everything that comes to me that people want my point of view on or want me to work on, is I try to bring that, all of those different aspects of my life and my work and the people that I've worked with, and make it true, and not let people objectify and villainize stuff that they don't understand. So that's where I come from, at least from that point of view.
Yeah, with journalism-wise, which is a lot of what I do, I just always try and make sure I'm thinking critically about stuff, and I always make sure that I wrote a big piece about X-Men because I love the X-Men or whatever, but it's also a very flawed civil rights analog, and it's very problematic. And I just always thinking about stuff that just because I found representation there, it doesn't necessarily mean that representation was there for everyone else. So I'm always trying to avoid those pitfalls of, you were saying about Doctor Who and stuff like that. And it's a quote, I have no idea where it comes from, but it's there's nothing radical about whiteness. And even though there's stuff that's radical about women and women's movements and stuff, it's not radical to center a white character. It's very much the norm. And I'm sort of, with my journalism, I'm always trying to think about that stuff. And even if I'm just doing a clickbaity list of 6 best things, it will be I'll be trying to write about 6 things you didn't know about Blade, or just highlighting some of the characters that were there, or some of the creators like Trevor Von Eden, who was 17, black boy who created Black Lightning. Things that people like that don't necessarily know, and just trying to use the platform that I do have to speak about that stuff. And with my comics, when I was young, I was very naive, and I would always just want to write these really inclusive comics that would always have people of color as the main characters and stuff. And as I've grown up, I really try and focus more now on making sure that any book that I'm doing and any story I'm telling is collaborative, so that I'm bringing working with people who actually have those experiences off the page as well as on the page, which is what I think is the main problem with the comic book industry in a big way, and it's one of the things that Lion Forge do so well.
It's true.
It's true.
We're amazing.
But yeah, and so that's a big thing for me, is constantly trying to create. I have a book at the moment called Witches Don't Exist, which is basically one of my biggest pet peeves in the world and in comics is, and my friend Adam there is someone I share this with, but these comics that are you know what, yeah, witches were real, and now they're back. And I'm wait a minute, so if you're saying that this is real and you're setting it in Salem, you're basically saying it was okay that hundreds of thousands of women were murdered all around the world because actually they were witches. And no one ever explores that context, or the fact that that was a universal murdering of women, especially poor women and a lot of women of color. And so I have a book about witches, and they don't exist, and they never have existed, but because of the persecution of women over a really long time, someone gets powers basically in response. And that's been, that's been a long-term thing, because I really like the idea of having that as a person of color as the main character, and originally that's how I wrote it. But as I go on, there's also a lot of stuff of oh, well, the first witch in the world is a person of color, and there's those kind of things. So that will depend on my collaborator and how it goes on. But just sort of being thoughtful, again, I think is the main thing. And showing people your work and being hey, is this okay? How often in comics do there's something get put out and you think, oh my God, if you just showed a trans person that, they would have been like, do not do that. Yeah. Or like if you'd have shown a black person that, they would have been like, please don't do that. Or, they might have said, hey, this is amazing. It's the hair thing. Like black women in comics, they always draw their hair terribly. And because no one's hiring black women to draw big 2 comics.
It's because they do no research.
Exactly.
I mean, you can just go to Google.
Right? That's the thing. I'm like, they draw these hairstyles and stuff that are just so awful. And like you said, it's because they don't do any research. And I think, just being thoughtful, researching, asking people, hiring people.
I guess the big exciting thing that I've done over the past year is I write for Polygon.com now, and I do a video series on our YouTube channel called Issue at Hand, where every 2 weeks I sort of explore, the nutshell of it is that it's a comics explainer series. So I pick a topic, more often than not, something that's sort of relevant to a big blockbuster release or something that's happening, and I sort of dig into it for an audience that isn't reading comics every week, but is looking at the DCEU movies and looking at the Marvel movies and going, okay, but like, how? Which is a very valid thing to say when you are looking at a superhero comic book universe, and how to even buy comics in a way that supports artists. And it's something, we're on hiatus right now, and of course we're on hiatus during the summer blockbuster season when I'm looking at all the news coming out of cons and going, oh, I gotta do a Black Panther episode, like, I can't wait to do a Captain Marvel episode, like, I can't wait, I gotta do an episode about Dwayne McDuffie, and it's also, I've sort of used it as, I know that I'm not, on YouTube, I'm talking to a YouTube audience, and on the internet, sometimes that's talking to an audience that isn't totally super there for talking about female comic book characters and how they should be better represented, and comic book characters of color and queer comic book characters, and you kind of have to take the time to step back to 101, support your points, and then still also put it in a video in a concise and engaging way. I stressed out about this, I think, the most over any episode when I was doing I did a 10-minute long explainer about Wonder Woman, about the history of Wonder Woman, about William Moulton Marston and his family, about Wonder Woman's fictional history. And I was so stressed over the idea of trying to concisely and engagingly, but not flippantly or derisively, talk about bondage, talk about polyamory, talk about the history of feminism in America over the 21st century, and to present all of those ideas. I think I did a good job. We got good reception from people. But like it's been really cool to wrestle with that in a new medium for me over the last year, and something that I definitely I'm really looking forward to going back to and like delving into more stuff with that, because I really it's really just one of those things where I know that I'm talking, that the new audience for comics is an audience that is less white and less male and less straight than it has been previously, and to talk to that audience and sort of talk to them about how to start doing that and how to get into that and how to find themselves in the stuff that they want to read is something that I find really personally exciting and fulfilling.
I think for me, the most fun I've had in the last couple of years has been collaborating and listening to a wide range of different experiences, but one in particular, I was on a book called Venom Space Knight, and Flash Thompson is a combat veteran, and he's also a double amputee, and I am not. And Jake Thomas, who was my editor on the comic at Marvel, did a great thing. He got me in touch with an actual combat vet, and Dan and I had, I think, a couple 1-hour conversations, and it went above and beyond any kind of research or any kind of or even yes, I should Google, definitely. Start at Google, don't end there. Is sort of what I'm trying to drive at, is find the voices that you're trying to share and talk to them and listen. Just listen. I mean, Dan had amazing stories, and whether or not they affected the plot or a character moment, they do affect you on a granular level, and that I think translates to the writing.
And I think one other thing you have to realize when it comes to doing research on this kind of thing is that Google is not going to send your search history to your entire family. I just on a whim, you know? So if you're embarrassed about like, you know, looking up like, what is intersex? Or like, don't be embarrassed. Also, no one's gonna know that you don't know. Just Google it, yeah.
Writers Google weird shit all the time.
All the time.
When they released that, like I can't remember what the computer's called, the one that like takes little sound bites, you know, from like whether your emails. With my screenwriter buddies, I was like, oh, we're totally fucked. I mean, we're going to jail. Like, it's fine. Just Google. You'll be fine.
I do want to take some questions, so if anybody does have a question, please go ahead and line up at the microphone now, and we'll get to that for the rest of the panel, and don't be shy, we're all super nice, I think. But while you guys go ahead and line up, I want to say to your point about Googling and hair and stuff, I don't want to call out anyone in particular, but like games, they can spend like 100 years like individually animating every hair on Merida's head, and then they have a black character and they're like, oh, they shave it, bald, it's fine. Like, cause like everybody's too scared to like try it, I guess. It's a really interesting phenomenon where, yeah, it can be scary to try and represent someone that is not you or your lived experience, but to all of your points, I think it's really important for everyone in this room, you know, ask people, talk to people, don't be afraid to interact with people or ask questions that you're afraid might be a stupid question, because they'll be happy that you asked.
We did the same thing on Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme. We have a character, Kushala, who's Native American, and again, Nick Lowe, who's my editor at Marvel, hooked us up with a consultant. I did some reading. There's a great book called Native American Comics, which is a wonderful history, which is both at times really horrifying and also inspiring. But to get to actually talk to someone who's had the experience is just, it goes above and it's going to affect your writing on a granular level, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think a lot of writers worry that doing research will constrict them creatively. That they have all these ideas and they'll do research and just find out that none of them work, and then they'll have to change their whole idea around, and it actually doesn't work that way. You do your research, you get all these details, and you just come up with more ideas. For every idea that you have to put in the box because you realize that it's not feasible, you get 2 or 3 that are cooler and more interesting and will speak to people more.
Yeah, I think it makes your characters better because they're more specific. I had a character in my second book who was adjacent to my experience, but not my exact experience. And you know, she wasn't in it a lot, but I still wanted to make sure there was sort of nothing weird I had put in or anything. So I had someone read it, and she was like, oh, well, you know, it's interesting because this character has this last name. This might be a thing. You might want to get another reader who actually has this experience. And I felt like because I then had those specific points that both of those readers gave me, it made the character way more nuanced and interesting, and she actually ended up being in the story more because I felt like she had more of a character. It just kind of brought her to life. So I think, like, to what everyone is saying, a lot of times maybe writers think like, oh, this will sort of keep me from doing something, it will restrict me in some way, but it actually makes your writing and your characters better.
What's your name?
My name's Nick, and I'm actually I'm covering Comic-Con for a young woman's positive online magazine. It's called Matiza.
Thank you.
And so I was wondering, aside from what you've already mentioned, do you have any recommendations for diverse and feminist comics or movies or TV shows that are out right now?
Yes. I have one, and I'm going to say this not just because I work for Lionforge. It actually is a good comic. I wouldn't lie to you guys. But it came out Wednesday. It's called Superb.
Yeah.
It's a part of the Catalyst Prime universe, which is our superhero universe. It stars Kayla, a black girl, and Jonah, a white boy with Down syndrome. And we are working with the NDSS, the National Down Syndrome Society, for sensitivity reading for it. And it's amazing. It's written by David F. Walker and Dr. Sheena C. Howard, illustrated by Ray Anthony Height. And it's great. What I really like about it is that, I mean, I've obviously read a little bit more than what's out on the shelves, but the story grows so much from the ideas of friendship, and because they used to be friends, she moved away and now she's back, and after this huge cataclysmic event happened, things are changed. They're not just rebuilding their friendship, they're rebuilding the town, you know? And it's very, very good, very interesting. And you can buy it from me later today.
I find like webcomics are pretty amazing. There's a webcomic called Agents of the Realm. Yeah. Which is just unbelievable and is like a super inclusive kind of magical girl comic. There's MFK by Neela Magruder, which is actually coming out as a book soon as well. They're collecting it, which is this kind of epic dystopian fantasy. Again, super inclusive, like lots of people of color. It's amazing. Neela's amazing. She also did a really great kids book it's called something about a fox. It's like Where is the Fox or Find the Fox, and it's so gorgeous. Yeah, Neela, I love you. But it's so gorgeous, and yeah, I think like I've actually found webcomics and stuff to be so much better at that in a general sense, because a lot of comics, they can be diverse on the page, but not necessarily off the page. But then again, I would go back to Steenz' thing. Kamala Khan is like the biggest phenomenon in comics. Like Marvel will tell you diversity doesn't sell or whatever, but actually Kamala Khan was, Miss Marvel #1 was the first Marvel book in like 10 years to go to a 7th printing of its first issue. And Marvel always say every year we're trying to make a new Spider-Man, this street level hero that everyone can relate to. And with Kamala Khan, they actually did that. So Miss Marvel is something I always recommend to people. It's an incredible book. It's fun, it's lovely, it's beautifully drawn. And yeah, those are my comics, guys.
I'm a big fan of Kim and Kim. I don't know if you guys know, I'm Mags Pistachio. I love Kim and Kim. And just real quickly on that, I think that one of the great things that is happening now and that's drawing a lot of people in who used to be out and used to be turned off by stuff is creators telling their own stories and and people telling their own lived experience. It's great to research. It's great to have someone consult like who is of whatever you're trying to represent, but it's even better when you're telling your own stories, when you're, so many people were kept out of comics for so long. Either intentionally or just were turned off by that. And to be able to, whether webcomics, I love webcomics. I love Phoebe and a Unicorn, Dana Simpson. I love all that stuff. And it's great to see those stories told by the people who live them. That's my thing. So.
And also, there's this new cartoon series called Danger and Eggs.
Oh, I love Danger.
Which is like made by a trans creator and is just like the wildest, wackiest show. I think it's streaming on Amazon at the moment. And I think they're doing a panel on it as well here. But yeah, it's really good. It's like wacky and fun and all ages, but it very much of the conflict and the stuff that the characters deal with, and because they both have absentee parents, one of them is an egg. But the creator was saying came from that trans experience and that lived experience. So I think it's important as well to see those other stories like that are kind of wacky and fun and aren't always, but they're still your own stories. Thank you.
I've decided that it is okay to plug my friend's work if it's been nominated for a Hugo. So you should all read. Yes. you should all read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and its Hugo-nominated sequel, or spiritual sequel, Closed in Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. They're really beautiful sci-fi books set out in space in a galaxy where humans are just one, race in, a big, beautiful galaxy of lizard people and squid people and robots. And they're just really lovely and really about character work and emotions and exploring sci-fi concepts from those perspectives. I'm telling small stories in a very big universe.
And check out Sarah's books. They're on sale downstairs, right?
There.
Yeah.
You can at the Penguin booth.
At the Penguin booth. They're really, really fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Erin, and I just wanted to know your opinion on the kind of newly controversial thing. How do you feel about Captain America becoming a member of Hydra?
I have you can find my opinion. I shouldn't say it because it says here like people might be under 18, but if you just Google Nick Spencer shirt, I made a shirt about how I feel about Nick Spencer, which is that I think that storyline is disgusting. I think the way he treats fans is awful, and I think that Marvel really needs a HR department, and I think that even if you think a story is cool, that's a prime example of like doing something that's salacious for sales rather than speaking to people and understanding why they have a problem with the story you're telling.
Yeah.
You know, it probably wouldn't have been that much of a problem if he wasn't such an a-hole,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I mean, like, it's a terrible decision. Yes, we get that. But if he was like, oh, man, I'm sorry, that was a terrible decision, people would be like, it's okay, Nick.
Yeah.
But, like,
Yeah.
now, I mean, like, dude, go back to bed, because it's, like, too much.
It's 3 in the morning and you've done a 12-hour tweet stream threatening everyone with libel if they say Captain America is a Nazi. And it's
Yeah.
like, look,
Yeah.
Hydra literally called themselves the Fourth Reich, and they brought Hitler back from the dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're Nazis.
You can argue that maybe now
I think,
they're not
I mean,
technically-
beyond he's a terrible person, yes. But I think this speaks to a larger problem that is worth addressing, which is big corporations suddenly realizing that diversity is trendy and
Yeah.
paying a lot of lip service to diversity, while still, I don't want to name anyone in particular, Marvel, but cutting queer characters out of their books when creators try to put queer stuff into their books, and then being like, oh, but America Chavez is gay, but no other books can gay. None. Or like, you know, like having no creators of color, no queer creators. Like, it's really,
And more editorial staff as well. And
Yeah.
behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think it's,
A
yeah,
damn
it's a major
shame.
problem. And they just announced that Confederate series at HBO.
Oh
Y'all, stop. Just like, let's stop.
What, you're
So-
saying Game of Thrones hasn't handled those issues very well?
Game of Thrones is great at women, I've
Yeah.
noticed also. Anyway, it's a really big problem, so thank you for bringing that up, and yeah, screw that storyline. Hi. What's your name?
Nyx.
Hi.
A lot of, no, well, maybe not a lot of, but some creators lately have been doing a sort of utopian world where, you know, everything's the same except there's no homophobia, or everything's the same except there's no racism. And I have been also guilty of that, where I wrote something where there was no transphobia, because if I wanted to experience transphobia against me, I would just go outside. But what do you think about that, and authors using that as more of like a cop-out, or as a refreshing, you know, I don't have to deal with this in this fantasy world like
I think you have
do
to be
everywhere
careful.
else.
Yeah.
You just have to be like super careful,
And
because
also, I think it's 2 different things, like you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
One is you saying that you don't want to deal with it, so you make that utopian fantasy totally valid. One is a cop-out, because
Yeah.
people don't want to do research and talk to people about their lived experience.
and you'll be able to tell. I mean, like, when you read it, you're like, okay. And
Yeah,
this is
it's-
not well thought out at all.
It's also, if you're going to eliminate all politics from your book, I mean, what's it going to be about?
Also,
Like-
that's impossible. If
Yeah.
your book has no
Everything
politics,
is
just
political.
Yeah, if we lived in a vacuum, that it would be different, but we don't, you know? So people are going to behave the way that they are used to behaving, and it has to do with racism and homophobia, and that's just how it is. And if
Like-
it's not included, like,
Yeah.
That was
I, oh, sorry.
No, please.
I get the impulse, because it's tiring. I mean, doesn't it? It's fatiguing. Like, to spend your whole life, you know, fighting this stuff. And it's, you know, to have the thought experiment, what if I didn't, what would I have been able to do with that energy if I didn't have to do all that bullcrap all those years? So it's natural to want to try to imagine that story. It is something you have to tread carefully on. One of the things that you see in comics, and one of the reasons that people get upset when there's a bad representation of whatever, trans especially from my point of view, is the tendency to want to, you see so few characters that are trans that you want to have them represent all of transness. You know what I mean? It's like, and if they do that badly, then it breaks your heart in ways that just like, you know, you're flipping by and you see a random character is never gonna, that you don't like is never gonna do. So it's natural to want to imagine a world and maybe make a world where that's not a thing we have to deal with anymore, and hopefully we'll get there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time. We have about 3 minutes, so we'll try and get through what we can.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi, I'm Dorothy.
Hi.
For me, intersexual feminism is about community support, but then there's this also another part, which is addressing misogyny. And so my question is, how can we address the male gaze and the misogyny of the sexualization of women or women identifying people in comics, while also allowing for sex positivity, knowing that sometimes women like being sexualized, or that that we can have positive images of sexualized women identifying people that aren't misogynistic.
I
I want to speak to this really quickly too, which is that characters can't have agency because they're fake. They're not real. So when people are like, oh, she's empowered because she's sexy, she isn't anything. She is not real. So if you are a dude making that and saying that, that's sexualization. If you are a girl kind of coming at it from your own experience and choosing for that character, then you're imbuing her with choice. I think that's a really integral difference.
I think that's it, is that thing going back to like what Cait was saying. So it's like telling your own story, because actually, like, if women make those books, or anyone, you know, people, non-binary people, and they make that book, and that is how they want to see that character represented, and they want to see themselves represented, is completely, like, you can do that and you can support that while still questioning the fact that men for 50 years have been making women who, while their male compadres are in like armor, are wearing like underpants. Yeah. You know, even the new Wonder Woman movie, right? In the Justice League trailer, everyone has armor. Aquaman has armor. He's never had armor, but he's got armor, yeah? And do you know what? Wonder Woman is still, you can still see her butt every time she fights. And I'm like, that's totally whatever, do your thing, Zack Snyder. But like those things, you can promote sex positive representations that are authentic and that are by someone trying to express that, while still saying like, that, no, like that's not good and it's negative.
And I think actually you hit it on the head when you said the word gays, because I feel like, especially with art, a lot of times it is about gays. So like, you know, Power Girl, I know not everyone likes her costume. I actually think it, like the, you know, with the boob window and everything, I think it goes with her personality. But there is a difference from when she's drawn very like in a powerful, you know, maybe sexy stance in that costume versus when maybe she's drawn in a way that you can tell is specifically for the male gaze, like for men to look at her. So I think that there is a difference in looking at art that way and figuring out like who is this for and what is it saying about the character.
I think also there's just like there's a systemic problem that like it's really great that we're seeing more representation on the screen and on pages, but when you look behind the scenes, it's pretty atrocious.
Yeah.
It's downright horrifying. And I think a lot of things would be greatly helped by having more representation behind the scenes and making these decisions. And again, as everyone else here has pointed out, like hey, maybe don't do that. You don't do, is a good guideline.
Or if you have more than one character of color or trans character, they don't have to represent all of transgender, to your point. Like they can be all different types of, or different kinds, because we're all different kinds of people. Isn't that wild? Thank you guys so much for coming today. This was an amazing panel.